Hello, everyone. This is the forecast for December 2023 for all sidereal signs, whether it's your rising sign or moon sign. Just to note that the difference between these is important, and it's important to understand the distinction. So the rising sign shows where it's happening in your life. It's more objective. This is what's happening, and there's no sort of denying that. So when you're reading it from your rising sign, any of these forecasts, and your sidereal rising sign, which subtracts currently 24 degrees from the tropical zodiac, then you're going to be looking at what is going on in your life. If you're reading it from your moon sign, and again, subtract 24 degrees from the tropical zodiac, you are looking at how you feel about that. And although how you feel about it is also what's happening, and how you feel about it and what you would like to happen also influences what happens to a large degree. It's obviously not the full picture. The full picture is both. So that's why I always say read it from your rising sign and or moon sign. Sometimes people don't know their rising sign, so it's just the moon sign. So if you know both, definitely use both, but know the distinction between both and also the overlaps between both. So before we get into this, looking at the general forecast for December 2023, I posted a separate video if you want to look at that for each sign. Of course, this is all going to play out very individually, and even beyond this general forecast that I'm giving for each sign, it's obviously very specific to your birth chart. So, any two people with the sign Aries rising or Aries moon sign, for example, are going to have vastly different experiences based on their unique blueprint. So I just hope that you understand that. And I never put that in my forecast generally because I assume that people know this kind of thing. So the other thing to say about that is, and one way, a quick way you can gauge that is to know what dasha or planetary cycle you're in at this time, because then you'll know what planet to focus more on. Because if you're in a Mars cycle, then obviously Mars's transits are going to be more impactful, whether that's on the first level of the cycle, the second level, or down to the third level, or even deeper into shorter levels. If you're in a Mars cycle, the Mars transit at that time is going to impact you in a bigger way. Another person who's in a Saturn cycle, Saturn will influence more so. So you need to know, obviously, therefore, your cycles or your dashas, as they're called in Indian astrology. So with that said, let's get into each sign by sign, and let's start with the sign Aries. So for Aries, rising and or moon sign for December 2023, Aries, your ruling planet Mars is now slowly coming out of its exact combustion, but it's still combust. It's still combust in the 8th sign of your chart. The whole sign is what I use. So obviously there's some hidden aspect here because it's hidden by being combust. We can't see it because it's hidden by the rays of the sun. And it's hidden in your chart because it's in the 8th sign, which is a very hidden dynamic, a hidden place in your chart. And in your life that reflects hidden motives, perhaps deep psychological processes that you're going through, transformations that you go through in private. You might not say anything to anyone about them, but it's like deep emotional process that you're going through. But in a more tangible outward way, it could be something like dealing with your partner's issues in terms of their values, in terms of your values and their values combined, in terms of, for example, jointly held resources, monies, and things like that. It also could be monies coming from other people, including your partner, that you haven't directly earned, perhaps. So 8th house is therefore things like inheritance and grants and loans and things like this. But it's also conversely taxes, like paying money back to governments. It's also about obstacles in many ways as well, and things we have to overcome. So Mars here in a very powerful position in one way, but also combust, is showing that you have a lot of power you can tap into, but there is a need to go within to find it and maybe overcome something, whether it's a fear of something, whether it's a financial thing practically, or whether it's a deeper psychological process that you're going through. There's something to overcome, and you can absolutely overcome at this time. And the fact is that Mars is now slowly coming out of its combustion in the weeks to follow. This is a process. You're going to come out of this process, obviously, Aries, and you're going to have dealt with all of these issues. And by the time Mars makes it to Sagittarius by December 27th, you're in a better position because Mars, I think I might have said Saturn there. Mars in your 9th house in Sagittarius is going to be more optimistic in general for the upcoming new year. The fact that it's going to be trining Jupiter, which is going to station in your sign by the very last day of December, that means that there's a very sort of inspired, sort of positive action orientated, really sort of rambunctious, I would say. Like it's going to be big. It's going to feel like, okay, I'm really going to take on 2024, like, and grab it by the, pardon me, and then just go for it. So this is actually more positive for you by the end of the month, Aries. I'm not saying that the whole month isn't positive for you in many ways, including that Mars transit and many other transits, but I think it's going to be even more positive by the end of December and into the new year. So the other thing to say is that Venus has moved into Libra now, and that's a much better position. I mean, in November, it was in your 6th house, and then at the end of November, conjoined Ketu, which has moved into your 6th. And so there obviously were problems to deal with your partner, perhaps, or they were dealing with problems personally. And now it's moved into your 7th house. Venus in the 7th house, Libra, is a much better time in December for your relationships and relations in general, like getting on with people. This is probably going to be a better time for you. The fact that it's also opposing Jupiter, which is now again slowing down to station direct in your sign, that's like a double whammy of goodness. So you've got Jupiter and Venus opposite each other. It's almost maybe like a too much of a good thing. And one of the pitfalls of this might be like overindulging because of other stresses and strains that you're dealing with. The most obvious being the Mars combustion and its square to Saturn. So the Saturn aspect is an ongoing thing. It is in your 11th sign, aspecting your sign. It's been doing it for the last year. It will continue into next year till March 2025. And so there's a bit of like a sort of a lid that you're putting on your ambitions right now, or something is putting a lid on your ambitions and maybe even your earnings and earning capabilities. And it might make you feel a bit less than in some way, but in another way, it can contain this situation where you have this kind of big, vibrant energy that wants to like squeeze out, but you've kind of got to keep a lid on it in as well. And I think that's positive ultimately, actually. But in November and December, because of Mars's square to Saturn, that might feel a bit more tense, and especially around finances, I imagine, because it's 8th and 11th houses being impacted here. But whatever it is, it's like this kind of ambition or goal you might have, and you have to negotiate with other people, and you're having to negotiate maybe other dynamics that are not easy to sort of parse out from each other, like this different kind of complicated issues that you're having to deal with somebody. And this feels tense. So that's the more tense part of December. The, again, more indulgent and possibly overindulgent part is the Venus-Jupiter opposition. Because if you're feeling tense, you might want to splurge a bit more, spend a bit more, eat a bit more, drink a bit more, obviously leading up to the holidays. So that's something just to be mindful of overall. And the whole thing with spending, and this is the main point to talk about really from December onwards, is that Rahu is now moved into your 12th house. So splurging and spending is probably, most astrologers are going to say, maybe don't. I would say, just watch it. Like, just notice if you feel the urge to spend more, if you feel this need to kind of retreat more, if you feel this need to sort of let go more. That's the 12th house. Try and incorporate more positive ways of experiencing the 12th house and this Rahu transit in Pisces. At the same time, on the other side, you have Ketu in Virgo. And I actually think, even though by sign, there might not be the most comfortable signs for these nodes, Rahu and Pisces, Ketu and Virgo, the houses, the 12th and 6th, are actually, in a way, you get more workable in a way. Now, Rahu in the 12th is a bit more complicated overall, because again, you might splurge, or you might spend too much, or you might overdo things, or you might just check out and not deal with things. Whereas Ketu in the 6th is potentially more positive, because you have to deal with something, and you do deal with it, and you overcome issues, and you get rid of problems. Ketu in the 6th house of problems is good, because Ketu removes things. So removing problems is not a bad thing. Again, it's just that if you express the other side of that, which is always there as a potential, is that not dealing with your problems then could lead to this kind of tripping out and not doing things you should do. So that's kind of an overall thing, and it will be so for the next year and a half, something to be mindful of, Aries. So let me show you the major lunations for the month. The first is the new moon on the 13th, 12th, 13th, depending on where you are. This is in your 8th house, in the house I mentioned where Mars is. And it's a very Mars type of new month as well, because Mars is the ruler of the moon in Scorpio, and Mars is with the new moon, and the moon is, you know, challenged obviously in Scorpio, but then at the same time it's propped up by Mars. So there's kind of like a mixed bag here. It's like it feels more courageous in one way, but it's almost like you have to be courageous because there's some issue coming up that you might have to deal with. And again, it could be any 8th house matter that I mentioned. So that's something to be mindful of. That's the new moon. The full moon then 2 weeks later is interesting because in that time period and just after this new moon, the day after, in fact, we have Mercury station retrograde in your 9th sign. So that is a whole reappraisal of where you're going in life in a general sense and what you're doing and what gives your life meaning and purpose. And if you're traveling at all by the end of December, I would really pack a whole lot of patience with you because it's probably going to get very messy. Hopefully you won't experience too much of a disturbance. But if you do in any way, make sure that you have at least some time allotted either side of your travels to kind of a bit of leeway, you know, so you don't have to rush home for work or whatever. But the next 2 weeks, so that's the start of the new moon then and the Mercury retrograde, this whole kind of reappraisal, this review that's starting to kick in already mid-December. 2 weeks later, then we have the full moon in Gemini in your 3rd sign, as Mercury is about to step back out of your 9th sign and meet with Mars, your ruler, in Scorpio, which actually they meet at the very first degree of Sagittarius. So Mars is moving out of Sagittarius into your 9th. So this back and forth between the 8th and 9th houses, again, you're looking at more complex dynamics and thinking about how you have to deal with these problems and obstacles, overcome them, and then be able to feel more hopeful. And at the same time, Mercury is going back through this process. And like you might have gone through this already and thought, okay, I'm over that now, but it's not quite there. And you have to maybe go back and cross all the T's and dot all the I's and all of that. As this full moon comes to a sort of crescendo in a way, this full moon in Gemini opposite Mercury retrograde, it's intense for sure. And the fact that Mars is hovering between Scorpio and Sag, meeting with Mercury, this could be where things blow up in your face in a way. And I would say, Aries, to be really mindful of engaging with people at this time around the full moon on the 27th. The fact that this is the Christmas week just suggests that, you know, it's probably not the best time, you know, to be taking up sort of like debates and arguments around the dinner table with family and friends and things. It's like it's probably not the best time to do that. I mean, if you do, just be mindful that it could really blow up in your face, that people could get really touchy and angry. You could get angry. There could be a lot of, you know, heated exchanges, put it that way. And at the same time, the more positive side of this is that there could be a lot of passionate debates that actually give you great insights into the inner workings of your own reactions as well as whatever the topic at hand is, because it really doesn't matter what the topic is, really. It's more about why you're reacting so strongly to these topics. So that's something to be mindful of for the full moon. And then I just want to finish it off for the month, which is the last day when Jupiter on the 31st stations direct in your sign. This is more hopeful for sure, because Jupiter is now going to move forward in the coming months and for the rest of its transit in Aries until May 1st, 2024. And it's doing so in a trine to your ruler Mars, which is now moved into Sagittarius from the 27th, and the Sun, which is also moving into Sagittarius. So it just feels more buoyant, and it all feels a lot more positive stepping into the new year. So apart from the other pitfalls I mentioned, this is something to really hold on to and to help buoy you up into 2024. So Aries, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Taurus rising and or moon sign for December 2023. So Taurus, your ruler Venus has finally come out of its weakness in Virgo conjunct the South Node Ketu and stepped into its own sign Libra, your 6th host sign. So this is the house and sign that represents for you the day-to-day. And Venus, of course, is in home in Libra. It's very much comfortable here. And the 6th house is getting comfortable in the day-to-day, you know, getting on with the tasks of the day. And that's why Taurus are generally the sign that probably enjoys the everyday tasks more than other signs. You know, they're said to be the, you know, those very sensual, tactile, you know, getting on with building something, doing something, and just enjoying that process. And sixth house is very much about process and processing. So the Venus transit in the sixth can be enjoyable. Obviously, there's a need to be mindful of the pitfalls of this, which is, you know, looking for love in all the wrong places. You might say looking for, you know, love to the point where you're yearning, you know, and I guess yearnings to the point where it's like, I don't feel it. You know, I want it so bad, but like when it comes, it's not it. It doesn't feel as good as it could. And at the same time, you know, Venus in the sixth, again, it's in its own sign, so that's good. But it's the sixth house that's the issue here, is that you just get bogged down in it. You get bogged down in, am I feeling loved? You know, assessing that, you know, getting on with work and all the details of your life might feel a bit like, you know, getting mired in all of the details. And so sometimes it's just helpful to take a step back and enjoy the bigger picture here. And you know, and that's something to be mindful of always, Taurus. I mean, I think this is something that Taurus are really good at in many ways, but also there's another side of that always to be mindful. So Venus, though, is out of its debilitation. That's good news. I mean, how else could it be but good news? The other thing, though, is that it's crammed in between Mars on one side and Ketu on the other now. So this kind of combination, when a planet gets hemmed in between these so-called malefics, it's kind of like feeling like being stuck between a rock and a hard place in a way. And again, even though, like I said, there are things here to enjoy, so you can just enjoy your day-to-day life and just the simplicity of that. After maybe like life has become more simple in a way that you maybe had to be, as it's forced to many times on us, to just be simple with things, it might feel like you're stuck in that in a way. But again, there's something there to appreciate. There's something to love and appreciate, whatever it is. Even if you feel constrained in any way by these situations that are come up. And the situations that have come up, of course, are a lot to do with children and relationships. And whether or not you have children or a relationship, you are in relationship all the time. You're in a relationship to everyone and everything around you all the time. So there's some dynamic here with Ketu, the South Node in Virgo, the very critical nature of Ketu and Virgo. And then the Mars combust in Scorpio, your seventh sign, some sort of unclear dynamic that's going on in your relationships right now that has to be sort of prized apart and understood and reflected upon, really, because Mars is no longer visible. It's combust. It will become visible again in the coming weeks, and it's coming out of its exact combustion, but it's still hidden. And the fact that it's Scorpio as well, which is hidden in another kind of way, there's a lot of things, a lot of dynamics that you have to figure out here, Taurus. So a lot of complexity in all of these matters. Mercury has moved into Sagittarius. It will backtrack into Scorpio's seventh sign. So it's this back and forth between your seventh and eighth for the month of December is going to be obviously tricky in terms of balancing these things with your relationships and dealing with any kind of financial issues or dealing with any kind of intimacy issues or uncertainty in general in the world. Like seventh house, even if it's not a relationship, can be just you meeting with the world. And then the eighth house is all of the unexpected changes that the world throws at you. And so with Mercury stationing by the 13th of December, just the day after the new moon in your seventh sign, this is a time to sort of reappraise all of that. Like, what's going on here? Let me just review and reflect on all these changes that have been happening and make my own changes, my own internal changes and adjustments to all these external changes that have started to happen in my life. The other big change that's happening is that Jupiter is about to station direct in your 12th home sign. And so this is more positive in general. And, you know, at the same time, it's more hidden. And the fact that the planets Mars and the Sun and Mercury are all in your eighth sign, this shows obviously that there is something here to deal with that is, again, more hidden. It could be that you're having to deal with some sort of deep psychological issues you're having to process. It could be that you're dealing with some sort of hidden motives and that you have those reflected back to you through other people, through your relationships. It could be that you're going on retreat or you're retreating in some way from the world to have to process and work all of these things out. It could be that you just have more quiet time at this time of year, not unusual. all of that's good. Just to be mindful that this is a time for going within in a way. It's the Mercury retrograde, yes, in a trine to the Jupiter stationing direct. But at least Jupiter stationing direct, even if it's in your 12th house, there's this sense of this ending of this thing that's been ending in a way. 12th house Jupiter has increased, along with Rahu, especially your expenditure, most likely. And now that Rahu has moved out of your 12th, which I'll get into now, Jupiter stationing direct in your 12th is at least, okay, let's turn this around. Let's turn this ship slowly around and let's look at this again and how we can approach this in a different way and how I can actually maybe surrender to this process more and allow this to be as it is. And if I need to make changes, I can make changes and feel inspired by those changes that I can make. And this is also a potential because of a more inspired end of December period, really, because of Jupiter and a trine to Mars and Sun. Again, because they're in your 8th and 12th houses, though, there's this need to sort of let go of something to overcome something, because there's also an exchange between, and I'll show you that. There's an exchange between your 12th and 8th house. So Mars is in your 8th house by the end of December, from December 27th, and Jupiter is stationing direct in your 12th house by the 31st. This exchange of 12th and 8th, these what are called these Dustana places, the quote unquote bad places or the more difficult places, certainly the more hidden places, is actually a double negative. It actually shows that there might be some situation that comes up that you have to deal with, but then you deal with it and you overcome it and you come out on top, essentially. So this is actually more inspired, even though it doesn't look so from the beginning, because from the beginning, it might actually throw up a challenge for you to deal with, but it's still at least more inspiring. So in other words, if something happens by the end of December into the new year that challenges you, it could be just your own inner thoughts about these things. It might not be anything at all that happens. Think about that as the inspiration. Like, take on the challenge. That the challenge itself is the inspiration to act and to do something more positive and to allow these trines to help with a more buoyant feel into the new year. Now, yes, of course, Mercury has gone retrograde from the 13th and moves back into your 7th sign. So there's a complex issue going on here with relationships and finances and other hidden, deeper dimensions of your relationships. All of that has to be worked out and reworked and reassessed for sure. But as that's happening, you can keep doing that while also then feeling that more buoyant trine between Jupiter and the Sun. I want to go back to the new moon, first of all, and that is on the 13th. This new moon is in your 7th sign. A new moon in your 7th sign, well, I mean, it is a very kind of deep, dark place in a way, Scorpio, and it's a dark moon. The moon is debilitated. The moon is conjunct Mars, its ruler sign Scorpio, but that's also like a double negative because the moon, though weakened, is with the ruler of the sign Mars, and it props it up and makes it feel stronger. So in other words, if there's any challenge here, again, you can take it on and find the courage and conviction to overcome the issue, to deal with it. It might be that you have to overcome some issue with a person. It might be that you just have to do that within yourself and to take on the challenge. It might be somebody challenges you, and to see that as a benefit, that challenging person or that challenging situation can benefit you by really digging deep and doing what you need to and getting on with it. The day after, as I mentioned, the Mercury stations retrograde and we'll go back and meet with Mars as it leaves the sign by the 27th. So that's a complicated period. And because it's also a full moon, the 27th, it's a real mixed bag of a full moon. I mean, it's a full-on full moon for sure. Mercury, the ruler of the moon, is now, almost conjunct Mars. You can pretty much say conjunct Mars for the full moon itself. And Mars is leaving Scorpio as Mercury moves back into Scorpio. So they cross each other at this juncture between the Scorpio and Sagittarius, your 7th and 8th house, with this full moon in your 2nd house opposite. There's some complex issues to deal with here on the 27th around this whole holiday period. So family issues, relationships, money issues, getting into debates. If it's not necessary to have that discussion, probably it's wise to just leave it. There could be something that's really coming to a head here and you have it out with someone or someone has it out with you, whether you say a word or not. Sometimes, not saying something can really provoke someone to say something, right? So just be mindful of the really sort of full-on full moon that is the 27th of December. And, you know, you can gauge it and work around it in that case. The last thing, as I mentioned, is the Jupiter stationing direct on the 31st. This is, you know, obviously a turnaround in many ways and a more hopeful turnaround. And again, a double negative. Don't forget that, Taurus, because of the 8th and 12th house exchange. There's a very positive situation coming out of this, whatever is happening. The last thing I want to mention is the nodes have shifted signs now. And so Rahu is at least taking the foot off the accelerator in terms of your expenditure. And now it's putting on the accelerator in your earnings in the 11th house and ambitions. So it's a much better place to put Rahu in a sense, with Ketu now opposite in your 5th sign, and it's really maybe taking the accelerator off and maybe even putting the brakes on the 5th sign. So being really mindful of the dynamics here, I would say, and, you know, being mindful of what the 5th house is for you, whether it is children, whether it's creativity, whether it's speculation, planning your future or your financial future, whatever, or any aspect of your future, making sure that you are clear about that, you know, without putting the brakes fully on, and not to overdo this Rahu character either in the 11th house, where you kind of have these huge pie in the sky ideas that, you know, might not be grounded in reality. So the balance, of course, would be a balance of both of those, that you're, you know, you're looking at the reality of the situations without avoiding issues, and planning it out, you know, strategically and all of that, but also seeing the bigger picture. That's what these two represent. So Saturn continues to aspect Jupiter in your 12th sign also. That's another thing to be mindful of as it continues through your 10th house sign. I think that's ultimately a more positive thing in terms of work and home life, to really stabilize these parts of your life while you're going through these other, maybe more personal, maybe deeper, unseen changes in December. So Taurus, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Gemini rising and or moon sign for December 2023. So Gemini, your ruling planet Mercury is slowing down in its transit in Sagittarius, your 7th house sign, the house of relationships, the house of dealing with other people, of meeting with the world out there. And as it slows down and prepares to station retrograde by December 13th, this is a time to be really mindful of slowing down. I mean, the opposite happens when Mercury slows down with the mind, of course, is that the mind speeds up, because when Mercury is slow, it intensifies, it's stronger in a sense, and it makes us more aware of it, because usually we're just going about our day and not really thinking about things as we just think. We just think, and thoughts arise, and we just get on with it. Mercury is stationing to go retrograde, slows down and goes backwards for a few weeks until January 2nd. Asks us to really look at, you know, what are we thinking about? Is this true, especially in relation to the sign Sagittarius, which is the sign of truth? And so as it does so in a trine to Jupiter in Aries, this is obviously a time to really investigate whether something is true or not. And for you, Gemini, of course, every time Mercury goes retrograde, wherever it's doing so, it represents your sense of self and your happiness and what would make you happy. And your home life is a big part of that. And every time it does it in a different place. And this time, again, it's in terms of relationship more so. It does backtrack into your 6th sign, into Scorpio, by December 27th until it stations direct on January 2nd. So it is incorporating the 6th house energy as well. It has to go back through that shadow zone or retrograde zone. And it won't clear that until the end of January. So this 6th house is implicated as well. And the 6th house, Mars, which it meets with as it goes back on December 27th, is a real sort of volatile, pivotal time in the month, really. And that's also a full moon in your sign on the 27th. So, yeah, I think you're going to have to be really mindful of your relationships in the month of December. You know, especially if it's like any kind of relationship, by the way, but, you know, you could think about your romantic partner or, you know, partner, business partner also, or co-workers, people like that. 6th house is very much about co-workers. So just thinking about all these people that you're engaging with leading up to the Christmas period, and there could be some sort of something by the 27th for that full moon that you have to deal with, that kind of comes to light, or something happens and gets triggered. You get triggered, the other person gets triggered, or whatever. Just be really slow and mindful, which is what Mercury retrogrades are all about. It's a time to take some time out of time to just allow yourself to have as quiet a life as possible, because there's already enough going on. Mercury retrogrades complicate things simply because it just bombards the mind with more to think about. You're already having to deal with your everyday stuff, and then you keep moving through life, but then like something is thrown back at you where it's like, here, you need to look at this again, you need to like review this again, while you're still having to do the other thing you were doing. So it just adds a further workload in a way that you have to be really mindful of, and the mind can get really overwhelmed by that. So again, just slow down, pay attention, pay more attention than you think is necessary, in fact, and at the same time keep an open mind and keep your sense of humor about you, is what I would say. If you're traveling at all at the end of December, I would, well, first of all, be really patient. Leave as much time for errors either side of your trip, like whether something's delayed or not. Likewise, in your business plans and also in your communications in general, just really leave a margin for error. Let me put it that way. Just be patient with technology. It's the usual kind of things that happen with tech and all of that. And, you know, you're going to get through this like every other Mercury retrograde you got through ever in your life. It happens 3 times a year for 3 weeks or so at a time. So it's not unusual, except again, just that 27th of December period is more unusual. I haven't seen this in I don't think I've ever seen it in my last 30 years of studying, but Mercury moving back into Scorpio retrograde, meeting with Mars on that degree that it moves in. So that very 0-degree mark of Sagittarius on the 27th with the full moon opposite. That's quite startling, really. I mean, it's like, you know, yeah, maybe not a time to get into those debates around the dinner table for Christmas. That's one thing I would say. This could easily escalate quickly and you can end up having an argument. So that's something just to be mindful of. There are lots of other things going on, of course, as well, including Venus, which has now moved into your 5th sign, a more positive place. 5th sign is about planning, enjoyments, fun. Venus and Libra wants to have fun. It is hemmed in between Mars, of course, and Ketu, which has now moved into your 4th house. So there might be some issues to deal with at home and work issue that maybe leads to more fun at home and with your kids maybe, or planning something, some trip, or doing something enjoyable, whatever it is. But there's still something, it might be something that you're having to kind of do around that, or, you know, it's like tense, right, leading up to the holidays where you're having to do the last minute work, whatever, get the house in order, clear the house or whatever, you know, all of these things, 4th and 6th house. So that's something to be mindful of as well. The other key thing that's happening, of course, is that as planets move into your 7th house along with Mercury. So Mars moves in and meets with Mercury the day that Mercury moves back into Scorpio on the 27th. But the sun will also have moved into Sagittarius by mid-month. So it now places the planets in Sagittarius. And even and especially by the end of the month, the 27th, Mars is exchanging with Jupiter in Aries. So this is altogether more positive, I would say, into the new year. There are some complexities, as I mentioned, about the Mercury retrograde and all of that. But Jupiter in a trine to Sun and Mars, especially in its sign, exchanging signs. So it's the 7th and 11th for you. There's some enjoyment to be had here for sure by the end of the year, the very tail end of the year into the new year. Something more hopeful, more passionate, more inspired, I would say, dealing with someone or some people. It could be that you're dealing with a group of people or friends. Maybe you're meeting with friends again around the holidays. This could be really inspired. Dealing with people and working things out and feeling inspired, maybe having worked things out. And that's also because of the Mercury retrograde, of course. Venus has stepped into your 6th sign and might smooth all of that out as well. So that could create a potential for a more positive engagement with other people if there are any problems that arise. Saturn continues through your 9th house, aspecting your 11th as well. So it kind of puts a lid on your ambitions in a way, which is not a bad thing in a way, because it just doesn't allow you to bite off more than you can chew, which is another issue with Jupiter. Rahu has moved out of Jupiter's sign into Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. So it still kind of links Jupiter and Rahu. And then Ketu has moved into your 4th sign. So the obvious thing to do here is to find more balance between your work life and your home life, and that you don't overdo one or the other, that you're not sort of focusing so much on your ambitions and your goals in life and your work that you're not focusing on problems at home that you have to deal with, or whatever it is, or just to clear out. I think the Ketu in the fourth Virgo is probably, and this is, by the way, a 1.5 year transit. I think it's probably a better time to kind of just do a clear out, Virgo. I mean, that Virgo energy is all about strategy and, getting things right and improving things. Ketu is very incisive and decisive in a way and just cuts through everything. So this could be a great time for a clear out. That could also be not just in your home, but also in how you're thinking and how you're feeling, and just kind of whole new year detox, I would say, for you, Gemini. And so I think that's also ultimately more positive, and it's just the pitfall would be overly focusing on work related things and what you're doing, as opposed to just being and simply being happy with the way things are, whether it's at home or wherever. And, that would be at one pitfall, that you're overly focusing on always have to do something, something has to be done. And maybe something doesn't always have to be done. Think about that. So that is all I want to say about the month. I'll just show you the new and full moon again, just so you're aware. If you haven't seen my general forecast for the month of December, make sure you look out for that video and subscribe to this channel so you get notifications and all of that. So this is the new moon on the 13th, 12th, 13th, depending on where you are. It's in Scorpio. It's with Mars. It's definitely a kind of check everything here. Check myself. Like, it might bring up some issue for you to deal with, a trigger. Sixth house, again, like I said, is a co-worker. It could also be a health issue that crops up now that you have to check and maybe like reboot yourself in a way. And this is definitely a new moon for rebooting. I mean, I definitely think this could be a time for an overhaul in terms of your health as well. But again, in terms of the health of your relationships, that's something to think about, as then the day after Mercury goes retrograde and then will eventually meet with Mars as it backtracks. And it does so again 2 weeks after this new moon during the full moon, which is in your sign. So the 27th, we have a full moon in your sign, opposite the ruler of your sign, Mercury, which is now about to step back into Scorpio, as you can see here, and Mars is about to leave Scorpio. So this is quite full on, this full moon. It's a real mixed bag in many ways, and that could be good in many ways too, but it's full on. And I think just to be mindful that because this is in the holiday week, not to overdo anything at this point on the 27th. Full moons are just, again, full on. And a full moon in your sign with your ruler opposite, retrograde, about to step back into Scorpio and conjunct Mars, suggests, that it all starts off innocently, everything's wonderful, and then you have this blowout with someone. So again, just think about that for the 27th of December and leading up to this full moon on the 27th. So that is the month of December, Gemini. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Cancer rising and or moon sign for December 2023, Cancer, the month of December is quite a mixed bag in many ways, and that is the case for most signs. And for your sign, I think it's more so the case. It's a lot to do with the moon in Scorpio, the new moon, a dark moon, a debilitated moon, but also then propped up by Mars, which is very powerful in your 5th sign. And then the end of the month and the full moon in your 12th sign. And then as this happens, Mars moves into your 6th and exchanges with Jupiter in your 10th. There's a lot of sort of mixed bags here going on. So it's like the 6th, 10th exchange by the end of December is like, having to do something maybe that is a challenge, and work related for sure, because it's 6th and 10th house, something that you're desperately maybe yearn for, that's the 5th house is involved. And because Mercury is also going to retrograde from your 6th house back into your 5th house by the end of the month, it does show this sort of having to go back and over things. What is it you want to do in the first place, being clear about that, and then the steps that are required in you doing that, but then having to go back over those steps again with the Mercury retrograde in your 6th back into your 5th, and like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board here kind of thing. So that's the kind of month in general this is likely going to be for you, Cancer. There are lots of positives in the month as well, including, of course, Venus is in your 4th sign now in Libra, and it's opposing Jupiter in your 10th sign. So there's definitely some enjoyment there, and it could be just, a lovely office party experience or something. Whatever it is in terms of work and home life, I think there's something to enjoy. And maybe that's an issue here as well, because there could be an overindulgence factor here. Venus, Jupiter opposing each other. And that wouldn't be, you know, something that's unheard of when you have these other kind of tense transits going on with the Mars combust and then it meeting with Mercury retrograde again by the 27th. You know, this kind of building to this situation here where you're having to tackle something, deal with something, deal with some problem, work things out, you know. All of these things require something to work out. And the fact that also leading up to this is that Mars is in a square along with the sun to Saturn between your fifth and eighth houses, which is again very much about you planning the future, but then having to kind of put up with sort of unforeseen circumstances or bigger things that are getting in your way. And it could feel quite tense. So that tension, therefore, could easily lead to this kind of overindulgent streak in December. But again, you know, it's Christmas. Most people do anyway. So I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying being mindful of it and why it is that you might feel you need to have that extra drink or that extra pie or whatever it is. So the other thing to say is that the lunar nodes have moved into Pisces and Virgo now. And so Rahu, the north node in Pisces, your ninth host sign, Ketu, the south node in your third host sign, Virgo. This is a time to really think about what you, first of all, think about. And what you think about over and over is what you end up believing. And, you know, for many, many years and your whole life, you might say this represents the dynamic between the third and the ninth house. The third house is like how your mind operates in a day-to-day way and how you communicate what is your truth. And the ninth house is like the kind of sense of these are my beliefs, whether they've been, you know, given to me, handed down to me by other people, or it's just the tradition that I was brought up in. It's like, you know, it's that kind of thing that really sticks. Rahu and Ketu here in these signs obviously are going to challenge those. It's going to ask you to really look at what it is you believe to be true and whether, in fact, that is true. And when we add into the mix the Mercury retrograde this month with Ketu in Virgo in your third sign, obviously, this is the time to be really mindful of communication. Again, around the dinner table for Christmas, it's leading to this crescendo in a way by the December 27th full moon. You know, just to be mindful of that kind of thing, because communication could be some place you might have an issue. And, you know, nothing at all might happen. I'm not saying that. It could be that you just are aware of these intensities and, you know, you just have to deal with them internally. And oftentimes with Mercury retrograde alone, it is more intense. It's slowing down and stopping. And so it's not that we slow down and stop. In fact, it feels like we're kind of spinning our wheels in many ways. It's like we speed up when Mercury stops moving. Our mental processes really speed up because they've got nowhere to go. It's like everything kind of slows down for us to pay attention to. So you just need to be paying attention. That's all. It's nothing more. So the other thing to say is that Jupiter stations by the last day of the month, the very last day, the 31st of December, we have Jupiter stationed direct in Aries. So although this is again maybe something to have to do with that work situation or some block that you have to overcome or some challenge here with work, the fact that Jupiter is stationing direct now is positive. I mean, it means that these kinds of bigger things can move forward, and the 10th house is a bigger thing. The 10th house is your objectives in terms of your career, and Jupiter here is helpful in terms of giving you the inspiration to move forward. It's just that, of course, it's stopping to move backwards and it isn't going to move forward for a while. So slowly easing yourself into the new year, I would say be patient with it. That January might feel a little bit slow with these things, but at least it's moving forward. It's not moving backwards as it has been for many months now. And the exchange I've been referring to is, I'll show you here, is that when Mars moves into your sixth sign. So, and I'll show you first of all the full moon, and maybe we'll do it backwards. So I'll show you first of all the full moon on the 27th, which is when Mars and Mercury come together at this juncture between Scorpio and Sagittarius, your fifth and sixth house. So again, something you love and some problem, or something that has to be done to get the thing you love, or the steps that need to be put in place in order for you to do that thing. Or if you have children, there's some issue that comes up and you have to deal with that with them, or they have a problem that they have to deal with and you have to help them in that maybe. All of these things are potential here. And again, because it's a whole holiday period, you might have to deal with some issue with this full moon opposite and just kind of learn to let go a little bit more into this, whatever this is happening here. So the key point here is that Mars is now in your sixth sign. And although Mars in the sixth can be a very positive thing, and positive in terms of overcoming some challenge, it is likely to bring up a challenge. And especially now it's exchanging with Jupiter in your 10th. So it could be a work-related thing, as I mentioned, but it could be anything that you're doing and being challenged in what you're doing. Like questioning as well what you're doing. I would just question everything that's happening really in a way in terms of work right now with a Mercury retrograde conjunct Mars in the sixth. And really think about it, really think long and hard about it. What are you doing? And is that the way to do it? Or maybe you could do it a different way. So it's really reaching a crescendo in a way by the 27th of December. And even though you might think work related stuff is kind of parked now because of, well, it's Christmas and holidays and all of that, it still is there lingering. And it's in a way, it's come to a head. And it may be that you have to step away from it to be able to see the issues. I just want to show you the new moon here on the 12th, 13th, depending on where you are. It's in your fifth house sign. It's in Scorpio. The moon is dark. It's weak, debilitated, it said in Scorpio. But at the same time, it's propped up by Mars, which is also in Scorpio. So this is actually a more powerful time in a way for you, a personally empowering time, I would say, Cancer. A time to reset everything, to reset your intentions, to find more inspiration. And it might be because of some challenge. Again, it might be that there's something that isn't working, or you don't see how you can get that thing, and you want to, plan that thing or think about that thing you want to do. And again, the challenge is brought up, but then you're given that challenge to get better, to strengthen yourself, and to really get focused and feel the inspiration to do that thing, to plant the seed. So this is the seeding time, essentially, this December 12th, 13th new moon. And the day after this, Mercury stations retrograde. So you might have that clear inspiration to do something, but then you also have to plan it. And Mercury now is actually asking you not just to plan, but like review it, like really go back over all the details again, because there's something that's not working. And by reworking all of these issues, you absolutely, by the new year, because this is the tail end of the year anyway, it is a time for winding down in many ways anyway. So why not go with that? By the new year, everything is going to turn around again anyway, and you're going to feel more inspired for action and start to move forward. And everything will be moving forward in the new year anyway. So why not run with that impetus? And in the meantime, in December, maybe slow down, pay attention, rework, review, reassess all of these things that you're doing. And again, it's all about work-related stuff for you in a sense. It's also relationship stuff as well, because fifth house, more so in terms of, maybe a love affair, a kind of a relationship that is in the beginnings in a way, is the fifth house, but also children and anything you love, essentially. Anything you do, it's thinking about, why do we do anything? We do it because we love it. So it's just for you, Cancer, I would say it's about thinking about what it is you love, and thinking as well. Remember the nodes in the 3rd and 9th, thinking about things differently. Try and approach everything differently. Open your mind to new potential and new possibilities at this time. And by doing so, you're going to be able to see things in a whole different way, and new opportunities will show themselves that wouldn't have been able to otherwise, unless you kept your mind open. So that's what I would say for the month of December into the new year, Cancer. I hope that has been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead, and until next time. For Leo rising and or moon sign for December 2023. Leo, your ruler, the sun, is moving through your 4th host sign for the first couple of weeks, and then into your 5th for the second couple of weeks. These are absolutely strong positions, stronger as I think it will be by the time it moves into Sagittarius for the sun. But this 4th house activation is there, which is all about home. And it's also playing into work, because the opposite is the 10th, ruled by Venus, which is moving through your 3rd now, but it has just met with Ketu, the south node. So there obviously is, and Ketu, by the way, ruling Scorpio, the 4th house, right? That's the point. There obviously is something going on in the homework areas of your life that you're having to adjust around. You might have to have had, changes you experienced in this part of your life or parts of your life. But there's a real settling down as well, I think, during this time of year as well for you, with the sun in the 4th house in general. And now that Venus has actually moved past the south node, Ketu, into Libra, its own sign. I think this is a more confident, self-assured time in many ways, and especially of, late, because recently, of course, the sun was in Libra, debilitated. Now we have sun in a stronger position, getting stronger in these signs, the fourth and fifth, and Venus now stronger as well in the third. And the third is very much about enterprise and confidence and self-expression, and it's gung-ho. And of course, it rules your 10th house, so it's all about work. So I definitely think these are more positive transits in many ways. The fact that the Venus is opposite Jupiter in your 9th house sign, and now Rahu is moving out of Jupiter's sign into Pisces, or the sign Jupiter is in, at least, into Pisces, which Jupiter rules. So we can talk about that in a moment. But at least Jupiter and Venus now oppose in the 3rd and 9th. This just all feels a lot more positive in December. And Mars, which is also ruler of your 4th sign, in your 4th and your 9th ruler, that also feels more positive. It feels like there's some maybe travel opportunities here. Now, there's a huge caveat there, of course, and that is Mercury retrograde from December 13th, just after the new moon, in this area of the chart, in the 4th house. So if you are planning on traveling, I think the latter part of December, yeah, there's a potential there, but at the same time, with Mercury retrograde throwing up its usual spanner in the works kind of thing, you need to be really open-minded about your plans and keep as wide an orb as possible in terms of, and dates open, and like leave some space, wiggle room for delays. All of those things I think are necessary if you were to travel. And a lot of people will be traveling, of course, by the end of December. You can't avoid it. But it's, as I show you now, with Mercury moving back into the 4th sign, meeting with Mars by degree as they shift signs, and they both cross over each other. It's quite an intense time. That will be the 27th of December. So that whole Christmas week, last week of December, is a complicated time for travel for sure. But again, a lot of people will be, and you can't avoid it necessarily. So you just have to be open-minded and keep your sense of humor about you at all times for sure. So let me show you how this pans out. First, let's go to the new moon, 12th, 13th, depending on where you are. It's at the latter part of Scorpio, your 4th sign, as I mentioned. And although the moon is debilitated, it said here in Scorpio, it's weak, it's dark moon in its weakened sign. This Mars is propping it up. So there's definitely a strength here, and maybe it's a strength from within, and you digging deep and finding that emotional resolve and reserves, I would say. And Leo, I think this is a very powerful time for you internally. I think outwardly there could be some challenges, like I said, and as we'll see after this, when Mercury begins its retrograde. But for a new moon in Scorpio in your 4th house, I think this is planting seeds as well. It could be some home issue that you're maybe altering around, like you're maybe making plans around. And you really just need to be loose with them, of course, but I still think it's important to feel that inspiration to do something, to take some action and to actually plant the seeds. I mean, you need to actually start something here. So I think this is a start in some way in terms of your home life, your happiness, and what you're planning. It could also bring in travel, like I said, because Mars is also that for you. And the day after, as we see here, Mercury stations retrograde. So Mercury is going to go back into Scorpio, and as it moves into Scorpio, Mars will be moving out of Scorpio, and they meet as that happens, right on the juncture between these two signs on the full moon, which is 2 weeks later. So I'll show you that full moon first. So this is the full moon on the 27th of December. This is a full-on full moon. Mercury and Mars are at the same degree, 0 degree mark of Sagittarius. As they move signs, Mars is moving this way, Mercury is moving the opposite way. So it's like, there could be an eruption here. There could be literally, Christmas, holidays, obviously sitting around a dinner table with family. This could be a tense situation with kids, family, home life, mother and father situation. All of these things are mixed up in here, and your communication, friends thrown into the mix for good measure. A lot of potential here for a major bust up. So I would say, Leo, to be really mindful of this and to use this what it's good for, which is saying what needs to be said, but not necessarily being very definitive if you're not really clear about it, and maybe not necessarily biting your lip, but maybe, recognizing that maybe you don't have all the facts as yet with the Mercury retrograde. Recognize that maybe it's, better to be, what's the saying? Do you prefer to be right, or do you prefer to be happy? That kind of thing. This likely would show the former and not the latter. So you need to be mindful of that. And what is going to make you happy is maybe having a bit of peace in the home life instead of, thrashing something out that really maybe isn't going to be sorted right now, and it doesn't seem that it could be sorted at this red hot minute. And this is what I'm referring to by the way, the 27th of December, because this is the full moon opposite in Mercury sign, while Mercury is about to move and retrograde, joined Mars, your fourth and ninth lord. So it's just something is about to explode here, and I just feel like just hold on to it for a while, without, again, biting your lip, right? Maybe some things need to be said, but again, you just don't have all the facts necessarily, it seems. The other things that are happening in the kind of bigger, grander scheme of things is that Venus then moves into Scorpio, by the way, and all these planets that have moved through Scorpio are now out of this square with Saturn. So that is one of the other tensions of December, which ease throughout the month for sure, because Saturn, Mars, Saturn, Sun, and the Saturn Sun in particular by the end of November, that's a tense one. And you might have been feeling that in a way that you felt, there's some home life relationship dynamic that's going on that might have felt a bit tense for you. And that continues in December, but like I said, it eases up throughout the month. And especially then, of course, as the sun moves out by the mid-month and then Mars by the 27th. Venus then is in Scorpio and moving in towards the square by the end of the month as well. So that's just, again, something to be mindful of, I guess, in terms of work. But, this is the 31st. The exact is around the 31st into the New Year's Day. I mean, yeah, most people aren't working, I would imagine, well, some people are, but if you're not working, I guess this is better than working, because your 10th Lord and your third Lord squaring Saturn in your seventh house. New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, I don't know if that would be like the best working environment to be in, to be honest with you. So a better way to express this might be just to be patient with yourself and other people, and how you're communicating with others as well, what you're doing, anything you're doing, even if it's not work, anything you're doing right now, be mindful of the home relationship situation dynamics going on here, because then you throw in a Mercury retrograde and it just complicates everything. So there's definitely some complications in December into the end of the month for sure. Saturn continues to go through your seventh sign. So it's really, I guess it's a good position really in many ways, because it's asking you to be responsible for your partner, to take on what they need. It's just sometimes it can feel a bit slow going for you, and you might personally feel affronted. Again, especially when it's in a square to Saturn, your ruler Sun in a square to Saturn, I mean. But again, that ends by mid-month, by mid-December. So that's, I think, more positive. Then what you have by the end of the month is a lot more positive, because then you have one of the more positive, I think, configurations that you might have all year is the Sun and Mars in a trine to Jupiter, which is now stationed by the 31st of December. So Mars and Jupiter are exchanging signs, actually. They're in each other's signs. And this is the fifth and ninth host signs of your chart. This is absolutely positive. This feels like very optimistic and buoyant and inspired, actually. I feel this feels really inspired. More, I would say, more than any of the signs in a way, with the maybe potential of Aries themselves feeling this as strongly. But for you, Leo, all the fire signs essentially feel it more strongly. But for you, Leo, this is going to be really positive. Now, it doesn't mean that it takes away all the other, like, the setbacks and things that you have to deal with in the home situation, relationships, and there's something going on there around those issues. But it just feels more positive. And the fact that the sun is involved here in a trine as well to Jupiter by the end of the year into the new year, it just feels a lot more optimistic to me. And so that's so positive. The last thing to say, and by the way, before I get onto the nodes, Jupiter is stationing on the last day of the month. So this means that all of these bigger plans and your more creative plans, more especially, and even financial issues, and that can be sorted out now, can start to move forward. They might have felt like they've all kind of backed up in a way, and you might not have been clear about how to move forward. But now that Jupiter is stationing direct in the next few weeks, it'll start to pick up speed again and move forward in your ninth house, aspecting your sign, your fifth sign. It's a good start to the new year, 2024, for sure, I think. Now, the nodes, Rahu has moved into Pisces and Ketu has moved into Virgo. So there is some financial issues that you have to deal with in a kind of more subversive way. There's hidden dynamics going on here in terms of family and money matters. And you really need to be mindful of these tricky dynamics here, even though, again, the new year feels very positive. There's some underlying currents here that are shifting things around beneath your feet that you're maybe not conscious of, you're not aware of. Maybe things are being hidden from you, whether deliberately or not. Maybe you're hiding something from yourself, you don't want to look at it. But the south node in the second house of family and finances, and the north node in the eighth house of inheritance and other people's money and the partner, all of that, there's some interesting dynamics going on here, I would say, in relationships in terms of money and how you're having to deal with that with other people. But once you take on the issues and you make the changes, or you just get on board with the changes that are happening because they're happening, then I think you can make them work for you, or you can at least alter your perception so that you're in alignment with what is happening. There are changes happening in this area of your life. And so apart from that, I think that December into January is a very positive time for you, Leo, as long as you navigate these trickier transits, including the Mercury retrogrades and that key pivotal point, the full moon, remember, on the 27th, when Mars and Mercury come together. It's this is a trigger. And I would say just be mindful of it at home when you're dealing with anyone and dealing with anyone in any instance, but certainly at home more so. Or if you have kids. Those are the areas that might get really impacted. So, Leo, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time, for Virgo rising and or moon sign for December 2023. So, Virgo, your ruler Mercury is slowing down in your fourth host sign, Sagittarius, and will prepare to move retrograde from December 13th, just after the new moon in Scorpio. And actually, it's going to move back into Scorpio by December 27th as it meets with Mars with a full moon opposite in Gemini. I mean, this is leading to a really sort of crescendo, sort of end of month sort of period. We'll probably feel that more so globally, but for you personally, Virgo, this is a personal time of reflection. It's probably not going to feel outward in any obvious way, like changes are happening or anything could be happening there. But it would mean that if you are crammed at home, let's face it, at the last week of the month, where you're at home with relatives you haven't seen for a while, or you're just in home and maybe even stuck at home, because Mercury retrograde can often show travel issues, or you're stuck somewhere and we're still traveling, that could really, blow up in your face, where it's like you could have an argument with someone across the desk at an airport, right? You could have an argument with someone across the dinner table at Christmas. Those kinds of scenarios are certainly something to be mindful of. But apart from that, I think Mercury retrograde in your fourth house overall is a time to really find some peace at home. If you can, just keep it simple this Christmas and go within and to take some time out, essentially. A Mercury retrograde is always a time out anyway. And because every time Mercury goes retrograde, it reflects two key areas of your chart, the first and the 10th houses, which is all about your sense of self, direction, and your career and where that's going. And every time it retrogrades, you start looking at that more closely and asking yourself, well, is this where I really want to go? And maybe I can jig this a bit and maybe change this a little bit. But when it's doing it in your fourth house, it's a lot more personal. It's a lot more like, how do these impact my home life, my happiness, my inner world? How are these changes that I'm making in my life, my personal choices and my work, career choices affecting me personally and my home? So I think it's important to think about these things. And also because it's moving back into Scorpio, as I'll show you now, and joining Mars, which rules Scorpio, coming the other direction, and they come head to head by the 27th on the full moon in your 10th house of Gemini. This could be like things coming to a head where you really have to be mindful of how you're engaging with people, essentially. And that's why I'm saying just to be really mindful of traveling, of dealing with people, of getting into needless debates that end up in an argument, all of these kinds of typical things around the holidays. Ketu has now moved into your sign with Rahu moved opposite in Pisces. And this is where you're starting to feel them now kick in more. And especially by the end of the month, because Mercury is going to go back into Scorpio, then you're going to feel that twist of Mercury in Scorpio and Ketu in Virgo, exchange of signs. So what that means is that Mercury in your third house by the end of the month exchanges with Ketu in your first house, as if Ketu in your third and Mercury in your first. This is a positive thing in one way. It creates a kind of double negative in some way, in a way, even though it does also bring the challenge. Third house is a challenge. It's like challenging you on your opinions, for example. That's why I'm saying maybe it's not a great idea to get into needless debates. Challenging you to communicate more effectively, because maybe you're not. This is the thing with Mercury retrograde in your third house. Third house is all about communication. Be really mindful, I would say, the last week of the month and into the new year, and how you're communicating, and whether it's emails, whether it's text, whether it's phone call, really to be mindful of slowing down, paying attention, and also listening more, and especially just listening to others, whether, anyone actually, but third house is more specifically siblings. And, again, I'm thinking of home situations and Christmas meals and things like that. This is something to be mindful of. But anyone you're communicating with, it's essential that you listen more during a Mercury retrograde in your third. Now, with Ketu moving into your first, and this is just the first whole month of it in your first, but for the next year and a half, Ketu is about removing something. And this is likely going to change you in a big way. And it does it every 18 years. So it's not a big deal in that sense, but it is still every 18 years. So in a way, it is. Every 18 years, you go through this huge transformation. And it could even be, if it's your rising sign, a physical transformation. You might find that you're changing your appearance in a big way if Virgo is your rising sign. If it's your moon sign, it's not so much a physical thing. It's more a mental, emotional thing. And oftentimes, Ketu transiting the moon can often feel like a rejection of some kind. So you might be rejecting some part of yourself, or someone else, or somebody might be rejecting you. There's this sense and this felt sense, and it's certainly a felt sense with Ketu. It's like it's a gut reaction to a sense of rejection in any way. And so to be really open and mindful of that and what is happening actually. And really what's happening is that there's a part of you now that is ready to let go of, actually, there's a deeper part of you that's not part of you at all. There's a deeper wisdom within you, a stillness within you that is watching this whole kind of show on the road. And it's like, no, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. So Ketu is a deeper part of you. It's essentially a non-part of you, a non-self, which is a deeper aspect. And I think the more you tap into that, the more you can channel this energy in a more positive way and become a vessel for experience, for other people to experience you in your open state. If you don't do that, of course, you might just feel like you're invisible. That's the other side of Ketu, where somebody doesn't feel seen and it's all about the other person. You might meet somebody, you might get into a relationship with Rahu in your seventh house, and it's all of a sudden, whoa, it's like, it's all about them all of a sudden, or it's all about the relationship. And it's like, I'm not even aware of myself. I'm not even in my body. It's such a whirlwind. I mean, it could be amazing. It could be amazing getting into a relationship, but Ketu in the first, Rahu in the seventh, it's like not thinking and just jumping mindlessly into a relationship. And then it's like, well, what about me? So there could be a lot about what about me here at some point in this whole transit of Ketu in your first. But again, practically, like I said, if it's your rising sign, it could be that you're just changing something fundamentally within yourself, and that changes your relationships. Or it could be the relationship that changes you. So that's a longer term influence. As I said, that will be for the next year and a half. So you've got a long time to settle into that. So enjoy it as it lasts, I would say. It can be profound. People can change you in a big way. Just meeting people, getting into relationships with people can be really mind altering and change your life. So the other things that are happening, there's quite a lot happening, as you can see, is that by the end of the month as well, we have planets move from Scorpio into Sag. So although Mercury goes back to Scorpio backwards, Sun and Mars are moving forward. So Mars is still in combustion. It's moving out of it slowly now, but it's going into your fourth house. And as it does so, it is an exchanging with Jupiter in your eighth house, which is now stationed direct. So by the end of December, Jupiter was stationed direct in your eighth house sign with Uranus, and they'll come together by April next year. But in the meantime, in December, end of December into January, we have Mars and Jupiter exchanging signs, the fourth house sign, the eighth house sign. This is very much about changing something up in your home. So now you've got not just personal changes you're going through, and maybe more obvious physical changes you might even be going through. It's like reflecting the changes that are going on within. You have to like change your dress, change the way you dress, your hairdo, or whatever. It could be something major. At the same time, you're going through very deep personal interchanges. And so emotional and transformational experiences, I would imagine here. And this could be, I think, actually quite inspiring. It might challenge you to make some changes and to be open to these things that are happening. It could be some home changes that are happening, for example, in a very obvious, practical way, but it could be just changes that are happening again deep within you, like you're changing your mind and you're changing how you feel about something or someone. But the thing is, it's a trine between Jupiter and Mars, and it feels more inspiring, even if it's challenging, even if like you've been forced to change something about what you think about something or someone, or how you feel about someone, because this is very much about Jupiter. It's fourth and seventh Lord Jupiter that's involved here in the eighth house. At least now Jupiter is in a trine to Mars and it's moving forward. So things are moving forward. It feels just more action orientated and inspiring, even and maybe because of having to change your mind about something, or having changed your mind about something, or how you feel about something. You're now like, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm ready for this change. And then you're starting the new year, therefore, with this gusto, with this kind of like, I'm really ready to make this change. So that in a way is more positive, I would say, overall. So I just want to show you the full moon again. And actually, let's go back to the new moon just to show you that again. It's on the 13th, 12th, 13th, depending where you are. And again, the day after Mercury goes retrograde, and then the moon meets with Mercury. And so this whole period for this new moon, it's starting in your third house, and this full moon culminating opposite Mercury retrograde in your 10th house 2 weeks later, as you can see here. On the 27th is the full moon. This is like third and ninth and 10th house is very much about effort and action and doing something. And again, combining this with Mars, combining this with the full moon, combining this with all of this energy that I think is here, as long as you can channel this more deeply emotionally felt internal, adjustment that you're going through with this more positive outward action. If you can marry those two, in other words, you're probably going to make the most of these transits. So in other words, you're making such personal, deep inner changes. And at the same time, there's this sense of, this is changing me. I'm going to make some changes and outwardly take that on. And so, for example, it's like, let's just say a practical thing. So it's like somebody is like, I just feel different about myself, and I'm going to actually just do a whole clear out of my wardrobe. And actually, I just started on my wardrobe. I'm going to do the whole house, and I'm going to change everything in the house. It doesn't suit me anymore. It's not me, and it doesn't suit my mood anymore. Something that's just an obvious, maybe simplistic example. But anything like that, anything where you're making some changes internally is going to reflect in the outer very quickly, I would imagine, into the new year. And that's why I think you should run with, Virgo. So I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Libra rising and or moon sign for December 2023. So Libra, Venus, your ruler, is now out of debilitation, out of your 12th house, the hidden place, out of that conjunction with Ketu, the south node, that eclipse point, that shadow, which has moved into that hidden place. It's like putting shadows in the corner. This is more positive for sure, because of late, I'm sure you've been feeling this sense of being lost in some way, or maybe having to wrap something up in some way, or feeling this ending in some way in your life, and just not being very clear about things and where you're going, and personal empowerment is not quite there maybe. But in another way, I do feel like this conjunction with Ketu can remove things that are in your way, and it probably has done at this point. But it's just that removing things itself doesn't feel very empowering, doesn't it? It does in one way, but in another way, it's like, it's like you have surgery and you get like something removed. It's like, yes, I'm clear of that now, but it's like you have to recover. So I would say this transit has been a challenge for you energetically. It's almost like a psychic, surgery kind of thing. And you're probably feeling a bit sort of, okay, I need to recover from this. And here's where the recovery comes in. So Libra, Venus is now moving through your sign for most of December, opposite Jupiter in your 7th sign, which is about to slow down and station to go direct by the end of December. This feels a lot more positive, a lot more upbeat and optimistic, a lot more maybe even over the top, I would say. And this is something to be mindful, of course, as well, is that if you're overdoing anything and you're biting off more than you can chew, and you're getting into some, like, really, it's Christmas holiday season, right? Festive season makes people splurge and makes people overeat and, all of these things. So this could be for other things that are going on in the chart. It's like you overindulge because you're feeling the tension in other ways. And there certainly are other tense transits going on. So just be mindful of getting a balance right, as is the case with Libra, always needing the balance. And I think this is more important probably in December than any other time. But in a general way, Venus, your ruler in your sign, is more positive. Yes, it's hemmed in between Mars on one side, combust in Scorpio, in a square to Saturn. All of that's tense in terms of family and kids and all of that going on. And then Ketu's on the other side in your 12th sign, kind of like this unknowable, uncertain thing going on in the other side. That kind of can feel like constrained in one way, and where in another way, it can just feel like personally, like, okay, let me just enjoy where I am. This is what I've got. Let me enjoy what I have. So I think that could be more positive. The more tense things, as I mentioned, is the Mars combust in the second house, squaring Saturn into the month. And I think this is easing now, at least. And the sun is also breaking up with Saturn and this tense square. Like, it's not easy, these squares. So again, it's second and fifth house for you, family and kids, finances and investments, these kinds of things. You're thinking about money, you're thinking about family and kids. And it's no wonder, like, we're heading into the Christmas period. So a lot of people are worrying about money and into a very uncertain new year economically. So I would say these are things that maybe you feel as tensions. And this is another reason why you might then splurge. I mean, it's often the case where someone says, oh, to heck with it, oh, whatever, and just finish the cake, or, spend all that money you had or whatever. It just kind of feels like it's that kind of energy in December. The other thing that's happening is that Mercury is going to station after the new moon. So I'll show you the new moon now as well on the 12th, 13th. And then on the 13th, Mercury stations in your third, and we'll actually backtrack into your second. So it's absolutely about communication, Mercury, but it's absolutely, absolutely about communication when it's in your second and third house retrograde. So really considering how you're communicating, how you're speaking, emailing, texting, listening. These are all important indications of Mercury in your second and third. It starts in your third. It's about self-empowerment and how you get what you want. And with Jupiter now in a trine to Mercury starting out the month, and even while it's retrograding right up to the end of the month on the 27th, when it leaves Sagittarius for Scorpio, this is overall more positive. There's a trinal aspect here, and then Mars and Sun will trine Jupiter later on in the month. All of that that feels more positive overall. It feels more inspired. It feels more optimistic and buoyant, and all of that is great. You just have to be mindful of, again, communication and dealing with your partner or others in general. And once you do that, I think there's a lot to be really enjoyed here in many ways. So if I just show you how this is all panning out with the new moon first. This is on the 12th, 13th. Now, this is in Scorpio. This is a debilitated new moon, i.e. a dark moon. So obviously it's a weakened moon in many ways, in lots of ways, but then it's also strengthened in a lot of ways, is because Mars is with it. So you're probably going to feel that sort of, at the same time you're feeling the buoyancy of Jupiter and Venus in your sign and Jupiter opposite, you're feeling this sort of, there might be a kind of weightedness, or emotional weightedness around this new moon on the 12th, 13th, but then also a very strong sense, a deep sense of reserve of power in a way that's coming up from within. So that is also Mars helping out the moon there in Scorpio. But again, the complication here is just the Mercury stationing retrograde as the moon joins it on the 13th. And then it will eventually move back to meet with Mars as it goes back to Scorpio, and Mars is about to leave Scorpio. So they meet at this juncture between your second and third. Again, I would say family dynamics, relationships in general, siblings, neighbors, all of these things you have to be really careful of. It's like a ticking time bomb here. So be really mindful of, now, Libra, you're not the one to kind of have an argument generally, unless there are other indications in the chart. You're usually about, keeping things balanced and fair and all of that. But sometimes being fair means rocking the boat. And this is the key thing to recognize here. Sometimes something has to be said to return everything to balance. And this Mars in your second moving into your third, and then conjoining Mercury as it's moving backwards from your third into your second, all on the full moon, by the way. So this is the full moon on the 27th. Opposite this Mercury retrograde, about to move back to Scorpio. Mars about to move into Sag. They both meet here at the juncture between the two signs. Yeah, I would say by the 27th, whatever hasn't like come to a head, I mean, maybe something won't happen then. If it's going to be around this time. So again, I would say be really mindful of communication, and that maybe sometimes to find balance, you need to, again, rock the boat. Maybe something has to be said, but I just would caution getting into needless arguments, I would say, and listening more. You know, maybe you're misconstruing what the other person has meant in the first place. This is Mercury retrograde, right? Venus has moved into Scorpio as well at this point by Christmas Day, the 25th. So there's a whole other dynamic engaging there where Venus in Scorpio isn't as comfortable. And so you might feel that, you know, getting into these kind of family sticky dynamics and finances that are a bit sort of, you know, a bit murky, you know, a bit sort of unclear as to, you know, I mean, people don't talk about their money, do they? It's a clear indication here of the second house, Scorpio as well. It's like, you know, we just don't like talking about these things. The fact that Venus rules your 8th house now is in your second sign in Scorpio, and Mars is about to move out with Mercury moving in. There's a lot going on, a lot of shifting sands. And so it's like having a really busy sort of engagement like at home, and like and these bigger issues come up and people start debating. And even if it's just around you, like, and you're trying to mediate all of this, that's something to be mindful of. Libra tends to be the diplomat in the room, but then you're trying to balance all of these kind of more volatile energies. It's a bit exhausting, I would say. So just maybe take a step back from it. I would say around the 27th. And it's a full-on full moon as well, because it's a moon opposite the Mercury. Mars is aspecting the moon. It's full on. Let me put it that way. So then by the end of the month, we have the Jupiter station direct in your 7th house. Again, that is more positive. Things can start to move forward in terms of how you're engaging with your partner and with others in general. And it may be because of these things that have been hashed out, right? It may be that you've had to say some things and they had to say some things, and everybody listened to everybody, and that's ideal, and that would be great. And it's all kind of coming to your awareness now, and that's good. And now we have a situation where Mars is in a trine to Jupiter, and they're swapping signs. So now the 3rd host sign and 7th are swapping. And the 3rd and 7th is all about how you communicate with other people, and especially your partner. And of course, this is showing that it's I'd say, a more inspired time for you to get this right, to allow them to get it right, to give them that space to listen, for them to listen to you, to kind of get on board with this together and to work together. This exchange of signs between Jupiter and Mars feels a lot more just inspired, I would say. It just feels like inspired action. It's like, I'm going to do this, and let's do this, and that's great. Let's go for it. That kind of thing. Again, you just need to be mindful of the Mercury retrograde scenario, where if, for example, it's travel plans around the end of the year, as many people have to travel home and maybe travel abroad, you know, to get home, and flights and all of that. This is complicated. I mean, Mercury retrogrades are generally complicated for travel, but this one I think is the most complicated one I've seen in a while. It's just highly complicated. Mercury retrograde back into Scorpio and conjoining Mars. You know, yes, there's the positive Jupiter-Mars exchange, but I think it's still complicated. Then Mercury exchanges with Ketu, which is in Virgo, your 12th sign. And then you've got this situation where for you, Libra, you're kind of stuck in the middle here, where it's like, you know, there's definitely some give and take that has to happen for you personally. And for travel plans, I would just be, and because Mercury represents that for you more specifically, I would just be really mindful if you're traveling. Make sure you leave yourself plenty of time to get your connecting flights or your train or your whatever, your taxi, to get where you need to go. Make sure you've left time either side in case there are delays, and so on and so on. So yeah, a complicated month for sure, but also a very inspired time, especially towards the end of the month, I would say. The nodes of the moon now, I want to finish on this point, is the nodes of the moon are now in their 6th and 12th. And Rahu in your 6th, Ketu in your 12th is about getting a balance right between overdoing, getting things right actually, and just allowing yourself to shut off and recuperate and restore and reset everything. And not to overdo either of those, not to kind of completely shut off and not deal with stuff, but then not also then to obsess about stuff. So if you're with Rahu in the 6th, obsessing about stuff, well, the next year and a half will let you know that, because it's going to be there for a year and a half. So make sure that you find more balance, and make sure that you use this what it's good for, which is getting your life in order, getting things sorted, overcoming problems, dealing with issues, clearing out some issues, while also taking time away to be able to recuperate and recharge and reset everything. And when you get those two right, I think you're going to make the most of these nodal positions. The Saturn continues in your fifth sign. That's an ongoing story, of course, for the rest of the year, next year into 2025. In your fifth house sign, obviously it's about children, creativity, expression, future planning, speculation, whether it's monetary or otherwise. I think this can be a time just to be slowly moving forward with these plans, because it is now moving forward as well. So altogether, I think the month is more positive, with some complexity for sure, as any month has. But if you work with them and know them for yourself and how they operate for you, you can make the most of these transits as you can every month. So Libra, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead, and until next time. For Scorpio rising and or moon sign for December 2023. So Scorpio, Mars, your ruler, is now moving through your sign in a stronger position than it was in November. And although still combust, it's starting to break away from the sun. So it's slowly, very slowly though, comes out of combustion, and it's still combust, of course, so you can't see Mars right now. And so this is more about finding the strength within yourself, even if it's not obviously out there. So definitely something to overcome, I would say, and especially as we lead into the new moon on the 12th, 13th, with the new moon there with Mars at the latter part of Scorpio. I think, yeah, this is a time to overcome something within yourself and dig deep. And so that strength is there. And especially with that new moon, I think it's a turning point for you, Scorpio, a personal turning point. There's a lot of other things going on, of course, in the month. The nodes have shifted signs now to your 5th and 11th. So we'll talk about that at the end. But also with Venus now shifting into your 12th sign, out of its debilitation into your 12th Libra, that's also more positive. So now we have a situation where Venus is in its own sign, your 12th sign, of letting go, of surrender, and allowing things to be, and just being happy with the way things are, just letting it go. And Mars is in your first sign, where you're feeling empowered from within. And then Saturn is in its own sign in your 4th sign, where it's more stabilizing for the home. It does also show changes, of course, in the home. And Rahu, which is now in your 5th sign, settling into your sign Pisces, it is also showing that there are more changes on the horizon in terms of the home life. So even though the home life might feel a bit sort of less stable, and there's a need to stabilize with Saturn there, it's still a strong position for Saturn. You know, it's stabilizing you regardless, in other words, of the changes that are happening in your home life. So I think that's ultimately more positive as well. And the Venus, like I said, even though it's in the 12th sign, it's one of those planets that does well in the 12th sign. So it's this ability to, again, you know, okay, whatever. Yeah, let's just go with the flow kind of thing. So that's also more positive. Again, the Mars in the first sign, the only thing that I'd say would be a pitfall about that is, you know, because it rules your 6th sign, and I'll talk about your 6th sign now as well, with Jupiter about to station direct there. It could be that you're having to overcome something, but you're really focusing on that thing, or other people are bringing that to your attention, and you're just so hyper focused on that issue. But because it's combust, remember, I don't think this one is as outwardly as obvious, but it's also potentially more innerly. You know, it's like an inner struggle that you might be going through right now, with some maybe challenge, maybe some addiction, maybe some bad habit that you're having to overcome, maybe some competitor, or somebody you perceive as a competitor, or an enemy, or a coworker that you see is against you or something. You know, there's something here that is challenging you, but because it's combust, it's like this purification that's happening. So I think ultimately it's ultimately for your betterment anyway. I mean, it all is, but I think this is potential here. The complexity of December, as I'll show you now after the new moon, is when Mercury stations retrograde and then eventually moves back into your sign. So it starts it in your 2nd sign and it moves back into your sign. So this means that you're having to deal with some family or financial or both dynamics that are not going anywhere anytime soon. It's like there's some spanner in the works here, where there's some issue in terms of dealing with some family issue, financial issue along those lines. It could also bring in friends. But money and family and all of these things are combined here to create kind of more interesting, let me put it that way, dynamic. There might be some challenge here. And then by the time that Mercury moves back into your sign, Scorpio, by the end of the month, we have Mars then move into the second sign with the sun, and then in a trine to Jupiter in your sixth sign. So now it's a combination of the second and sixth sign. And so now it's really very much about some challenge, financial challenge, some family dynamic challenge that you're having to deal with. But I want to show you by the end of the month how that might be a more positive thing ultimately, even if it is a challenge. So first of all, let's look at the new moon. This is the new moon on the 12th, 13th, thereabouts. So the new moon, even though it's a dark moon, a debilitated, weak moon in Scorpio, it is also propped up by Mars, as I said. So it's like a double negative in a way. It's like it's helped out by Mars' strength. And even though Mars itself is, combust and all of that, it's still strong. It still feels really powerful. And I think this is a powerful turning point for you. But as I said, it's the day after that Mercury stations retrograde in your second sign. And so whatever about the personal new beginning that you're having, Scorpio, you're really obviously having to think about, well, the finances that support you in doing that, the resources that you need, the family support that you need to do what you want at this time, thinking about those things. So what happens 2 weeks later, though, is what's really interesting. And that is, if I show you here, the full moon on the 27th, is that the full moon is opposite this Mercury. Of course, the moon is in Mercury sign. So the Mercury is important here. And it's about to step back into your sign at 0 degrees, and Mars about to step out of your sign. So they both meet here at 0 degrees. And that is tricky. So they cross over each other at this juncture between Scorpio and Sagittarius. That's tricky between Mars and Mercury. It's already tricky, Mars and Mercury, and a Mercury retrograde at that. And both of them crossing over at this juncture, which is like a void in the zodiac in a way. It's highly volatile. Really be mindful of yourself, your speech, family issues. If you're at home around Christmas by the 27th, leading up to the 27th, to be really mindful of what you're saying, because things could really blow up in your face at this time. And I would just be mindful of that. It's a potential. It doesn't have to happen. And I'm not saying that you should bite your lip till you bleed. I'm just saying maybe something has to be said. I don't know. But it's really the question of, as many times somebody's asked, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because, yeah, you could be right here, but that could create a lot of misery. So this is just the kind of hot spot of the month of December, the 27th, the full moon, because it's a full moon as well. And then it just triggers everything. So I would say just kind of, again, just take a step back from this one. I would say Venus has moved into your sign by Christmas Day, the 25th of December. So it might be a bit more able to smooth things out here that would otherwise be just harsh, but it's still complicated. It's still definitely complicated. Now we have Mars in your second sign, Mercury moving back through your sign. So what happens now is by the 31st, Jupiter stops moving backwards. It stations direct in your sixth host sign. This is when you can start to now slowly, but certainly move forward over the next few weeks and into the new year with more inspired action that feels like, okay, I'm getting over this issue now. I'm getting over it long last and I'm moving forward. It could be a health routine that you've let go. It could be a health issue that you've not dealt with that you're dealing with now, whether it's mental or physical. Whatever it is, or some challenge that you haven't been dealing with, or it's been put off, or you haven't been able to deal with it for whatever reason, even if you haven't put it off, there's things moving forward now, at least. The thing is that into the new year, Mars is in Sagittarius. So they swap signs. Your ruler, Mars in Sagittarius, Jupiter in Aries, Mars' sign. So they're swapping the second and sixth. This is said to be more challenging because it brings the sixth house conflict into second house matters, which in a way need more stability than this suggests, i.e. finances and family. And at the same time, I feel like this shows a potential here, more of a possibility to overcome some challenges that you might have been dealing with family here. And again, finances and, family and finances combined potentially. So how all of this plays out, of course, and how it all affects you, of course, is important because Saturn, don't forget, is transiting through your fourth sign and aspects Jupiter in your sixth and aspects your sign, Scorpio, where these planets have been moving through in this square to Sun initially, and then Mars, and through December, and now Mercury again, and then Venus moving into a square to Saturn by the new year. Everything feels a bit tense by the end of the year. And yet still there's something inspired here. Still there's some potential to overcome some challenge here and to come out on top and to deal with things and to make things better. And in a way, Scorpio, if there are any sign I could say this of, it's you. If you don't have something to work on, then you feel like, something's missing. And you won't have to worry about that in December because there's a lot to figure out here. The other thing and the last thing to say is the nodes. So the nodes have now moved into your 5th and 11th. Rahu, the north node, into your 5th, Pisces, Ketu, the south node, to your 11th, Virgo. It's really important to be mindful of the dynamics involved here. The dynamics of, not neglecting, for example, your friends or your higher ambitions, which is the 11th house, or your earning capability, in favor of something that is more fun, for sure, the 5th house, or more inspired, or more creative. Like for example, somebody who just feels the urge to do this wacky creative thing, and it's like, I don't know if I have the finances for this, but I just feel I need to do this thing. Or, for example, somebody who just jumps headlong into a romantic, relationship, have an affair, and this is just amazing. This is mind blowing, and then just completely like forgetting, oh, I've got to, I haven't earned any money this week, right? This kind of thing. This 5th, 11th dynamic is going to get really charged for the next year and a half. So being really mindful of how you play this in terms of getting a balance right between the two so that you do what you need to do and take responsibility for those things and enjoy yourself when you can enjoy yourself and not overdo that either. And there's a need to kind of find a balance between the two, because oftentimes when Rahu and Ketu are in these signs, they're in each other's signs in a way. They're opposite each other's nature. Ketu, in a way, is better suited to Pisces and just letting go and enjoying yourself, like mindless enjoyment, really. Hedonism, maybe even. But Rahu in Virgo is better in a way because it's able to deal with, earning and ambition and working towards a goal. Here, they're just not in their own spaces in a way. So they kind of flip. And they do that for everybody, by the way. But for you, Scorpio, you're having to think about how does that play out in terms of my creative life and my earning and my, what I love to do versus what I could do for others as well. There might be a big issue here of like rejecting other people, like whether it's a friend or some sort of social outlet that you normally have. And it's like, I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm interested in this person or this thing now. So just, again, thinking about getting about a balance, right? More so. Venus, like I said, is moving into your sign now by Christmas Day, and Mercury continues to retrograde to the 2nd of January. So this whole period into the new year, there's some enjoyments there for sure. I think there's some pleasant things to experience during all of these other complex transits and tensions that are definitely peaking into December. But I'm sure you can manage them, Scorpio, if anyone can. And I hope you enjoy what there is to enjoy. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Sagittarius rising and or moon sign for December 2023. So Sagittarius, Jupiter, your ruling planet, is about to slow down and it's about to station direct in your 5th sign, in the sign Aries. And as it does so, Mars is about to move into your sign by the end of the month. And trying this configuration here, this is like a more positive end to the month and the year and into the new year, I feel. And just like with the other fire signs, Aries and Leo, for you, Sagittarius, you're going to find this more inspiring overall. But before then, so I wanted to put that out there first, because before then, there's some tricky things to, navigate, obviously. And one of those more obvious things is Mercury retrograde in your sign from the 13th of December. And it moves backwards into your 12th sign by the 27th of December on the full moon. And that's even more tricky when Mercury steps back into your 12th house, because it then conjoins Mars, which is stepping out of your 12th house into your sign. And so that whole full moon period by the 27th of December, that whole last week of December is a potential hotspot. Now, that could be in a positive way as well. It could be like passions rearing their head, like really erupting, but that could also just mean simply arguments. And so because Mercury rules other people and how you relate to them and work related issues, and it's doing this retrograde thing, and every time it retrogrades, of course, you go through this head spin around what am I doing, where am I going, who am I doing it with, kind of thing. Because it's now doing that with Mars and going back into Mars's sign as it comes out and is raring to go into your sign, Mars is coming out with guns blazing. I think this could be potentially, triggering. Again, if you're not triggered, the other person is triggered, and there's someone triggered somewhere, right? And just be mindful of the trigger, I would say, the last week of December. Having said that, like I said, after that, then there's this sort of more conducive, inspiring, I would say, and that's a strong word, that's inspired Jupiter Mars trine, which I'm going to talk about at the end. The other thing to say is that Rahu and Ketu now have moved into your fourth and 10th signs. And so this is just setting it up for the next year and a half, of course. But the good news here is that because Rahu and Jupiter are breaking up, it's leaving Jupiter behind. Now, it also means that Jupiter isn't propped up in a way by Rahu anymore. It hasn't got, it's almost like a sugar high you have to come down off now. Yes, there might be the Uranus there kind of keeping it buzzy, but at the same time, Saturn is having a stronger influence on Jupiter right now, or after this period, and it just might feel a bit flatter in a way. Now, that's just something to be mindful of, despite the inspiration that comes in by the end of December with Mars moving into your sign, where this feels just, again, a lot more inspired action where you can really take off in the new year in a really positive way. Overall, the Jupiter aspected by Saturn, no longer propped up by Rahu, is, something to be mindful of, especially in relation to your home life and your plans for the future, because the fifth house is very much about that. Whether it includes children or not, it's very much about your planning and thinking and looking ahead. That's the fifth house, and being able to see clearly ahead as well. And that's the key thing about December, because Jupiter is at least stopping to move back. It's going to station direct, and it's going to start moving forward. And it's going to move forward with, again, a gusto by the end of the year into the new year. At least slowly at first, yes, and all of that, but it's still moving forward into the new year, and that just feels more inspired overall. So let me show you, first of all, the new moon, which is actually in your 12th sign. That's on the 12th, 13th, depending on where you are. But the new moon in your 12th sign, the latter part of the 12th sign, together with Mars, is definitely a mixed bag, because it's a dark moon and a debilitated moon in your 12th sign. All of that is hidden. But Mars is also strong, and also itself hidden in a way, because it's hidden in a different way. It's still strong. And so that Mars props up the moon. And so there's a strength that you can tap into here, even if it's not obvious where that's coming from. And again, because Mars rules this fifth sign that is really activated strongly in December, with Saturn aspecting, Rahu also still aspecting, and Jupiter stationing, with Venus opposite. A lot of focus on the fifth sign and your plans for the future. So with Mars ruling this in your 12th sign, even though it's kind of lost in way in the 12th sign and it's a new moon, there's still like something like planting seeds here and, trusting that process and that things will come out, and it will actually quite quickly, as I'll show you. But first, we've got to get through this Mercury retrograde. So that's the day after the new moon. On the 13th of December, Mercury stations to retrograde, and until January 2nd. But by 27th of December, it will move back into Scorpio on the full moon, which is opposite in Gemini. The full moon is in Gemini, right? So this is full on, and I'm going to show you this now. It's a full on full moon for sure, the 27th of December. And so if I just bring it back to your sign, first of all, you can see here, Mercury's done retrograding in your sign. It's going to slip back into your 12th sign, and Mars is done with your 12th, going to move into your first sign, and they meet here at the juncture between these two signs. This is quite volatile. Again, this is why I would say just be really mindful of this period, the last week of the month, leading up to the 27th. A full moon just brings it all out in your 7th sign. It can be a very social time, though. I imagine this could be quite enjoyable. But again, somebody says something or you say something, and then it's like, oops, and it just blows up. So being mindful of that. Now, what happens after is that Mercury goes into your 12th sign, with Venus now from Christmas Day, 25th of December, in your 12th sign. All of that is kind of enjoyable in one way. And Venus, more than any other planet, likes it in the 12th sign in many ways. It's like, okay, just let it go, just enjoy it for what it is, right? Mercury retrograde in your 12th is just a lot more confused about where you're going and who you're going there with. Remember, 7th and 10th Lord in the 12th. Together with that, and the fact that it's exchanging now with Ketu, the south node in your 10th, the 10th, 12th exchange right now and until the end of January is a bit like, yeah, where am I going really? Not being really clear about that in more practical ways. But again, I want to draw your attention to the Mars in your sign in a trine to Jupiter in your 5th sign. And that's where the inspiration comes. And by the 31st, Jupiter was stationed direct. Your ruler stationing direct in your 5th, with Mars now in a trine, swapping signs, 1st and 5th. That is the thing to keep in mind, and to feel inspired by that, whatever about the sort of the snags along the way, that getting bogged down in the this isn't working, or that's not working, or this person isn't doing whatever and that isn't happening, whatever it is, all of that to say you still have this inspiration to tap into in December, by the very end of the month and into the new year. And that's what I would gravitate more towards, more than anything. And as the bigger changes are happening in your home and work life, as the nodes are indicating, North node in your 4th house, South node in your 10th house, to really sort of make the adjustments into the new year, of which there are a lot to make, so that you're ready and able to adapt to these bigger changes that are happening in your home and work life. So it's definitely a mixed bag of a month, I would say, Sagittarius, but it's also, I think, an inspiring time for you, as I mentioned, for the other fire signs. And I think you should use that inspiration, whatever about the details, whatever about the kind of the setbacks or delays that might happen. There's something to feel fired up by the end of the month. So I hope you found that helpful. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Capricorn rising and or moon sign for December 2023. So Capricorn, Saturn, your ruler, is now moving forward in your 2nd whole sign, Aquarius. And this is all about family, finances, values, what supports you, what keeps you feeling safe, secure. And I think Saturn's slow movement forward offers an ability for you to move forward with your plans around this. And because the 2nd sign is very much about plans, about the future, you know, when people plan to save, it's very much a future orientated thing. You know, you start to put in a nest egg, you know, for yourself as support. And that's what the 2nd sign is all about. Family also plays a big role here, of course, as well, because they instill that sense of like, you need to save, you need to, work hard and all of those things. That's the kind of things that people get told, right? But this is more so the case for Capricorn because it rules the 2nd sign. And so it's very much about progress as well, because Aquarius is that. And with Rahu now also moved into your 3rd sign, where it's well placed for sure to kind of go for something that you want and to do something that you want. I think the combination of these two, with Saturn in the 2nd, Rahu in the 3rd, can be a great time for building something you want, and a more enterprising time perhaps, or a more engaged, socially engaged time perhaps, if nothing else, for you to do things that you want to do, to follow your path, to speak your truth and to go for it, right? So all of these are kind of bigger indications that last a long time. And, Saturn, of course, until the beginning of 2025 is here, impacting your finances, your family life, your speech also, and your food is another 2 things to be mindful of. To really maybe look at those things very closely with Saturn here, because he's not going to let you get away with anything, to be honest. Saturn in the 2nd house, yeah, he just doesn't allow you to eat whatever you want and drink what you want. He's going to, make you pay for that quite quickly. So, and that's not a planet out there or Saturn himself doing that. That's a part of you doing that. That's a part of you that knows that if I eat that, I'm not going to feel good. Or if I drink all of that, I'm not going to feel too good tomorrow. And so Saturn is that kind of voice in our head that says, oh, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't. That's all Saturn is. So just be mindful of that, because when we have those shouldn'ts in our head, we know that actually there's a reason for them. Rahu, on the other hand, in the 3rd, can be a bit like a splurge. This is the thing with Rahu in Pisces, and Neptune there as well. And Neptune is, in modern astrology, is said to rule or represent alcohol. You can see why the correlation, because it kind of makes things a bit blurry, literally. So I would say, this kind of enjoyment house, the 3rd house in Pisces and Rahu, Neptune, is something to be mindful of. And maybe, I don't know if it's partaking in alcohol or other substances, whatever it might be for you. I think something to be mindful of, not to overdo, of course, because if you overdo anything, and with Rahu, there is a tendency to do that, then you neglect the other side of the coin, which is Ketu. And Ketu in the 9th house is about something more meaningful, maybe more spiritual, maybe travel plans are more traditional, thinking about things that offer you more meaning and purpose in life, as opposed to just mere enjoyment, right? And I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy yourself, because absolutely Rahu in the 3rd in Pisces with Neptune can be enjoyable, and absolutely go for it. But just again, it's a case of how much you do that and how little of the other. It's about getting a balance, is what I'm saying. The other big things that are happening, there's quite a lot happening, is that Mars and the Sun, which means Mars combust, is continuing to move through your 11th sign. Venus has moved into your 10th sign. Mercury will about station retrograde by the 12th, 13th, just after the new moon on the 12th, 13th. And Jupiter is about to station direct in a trine to Mercury and all the planets that are moving here into Sagittarius. So there's definitely some more inspired things coming in by the end of the month. There's also complexity and complication because of Mercury retrograde, and especially, as I'll show you, by the full moon on the 27th, a major complication. But apart from that, it feels much more like a progressive, inspired action, sort of moving forward kind of month. Of course, it affects everybody differently. So let's see how it's all playing out for you, Capricorn. So let me show you. Let's first of all look at the new moon on the 12th, 13th, depending on where you are. This is a new moon in Scorpio with the moon, and as a dark moon, debilitated. So it's a dark moon, so it's weaker. It's weaker because it's debilitated. And all of that sounds, oh God, that doesn't sound good, except for the fact that it's with Mars, the ruler, which props it up. It's like turns it all up on its head. So it's like, it might initially feel a bit challenging, but then you meet with the challenge with Mars, and then you really find it in yourself to deal with that. So Capricorn, I would say this is a more positive thing. Now, if you're dealing with people in any kind of social engagement by the middle of December, as is often the case leading up to the festive season, just be really mindful around this time, because the day after this new moon, Mercury stations retrograde. So, and then it eventually goes back into your 11th sign, into Scorpio, and it meets with Mars as it does so by the 27th of December. So this whole period by the latter part of December, I would say, be really mindful of social engagements and how it can trigger things, even if it's not you deliberately or in any way directly doing that. It could be other people getting triggered, you know, sitting around having a discussion about something, and all of a sudden someone has a really strong opinion, and, you know, it spirals, right? Think about these things, I would say, in a general setting or in a social setting generally. Mercury continues to retrograde, like I said, and 2 weeks later, as I'll show you here, on the 27th, we have the full moon. So let me bring it back to your sign, first of all. So we have the full moon opposite the Mercury, because Mercury rules the full moon in Gemini, in your 6th sign, with Mercury in your 12th, moving back to your 11th. So there's some conflict maybe to overcome here. And as Mercury does so, it meets with Mars in your 11th, moving into your 12th. So there's this give and take that has to happen, essentially, Capricorn. And I think you're going to have to learn this give and take in December, and, you know, more than ever. Now, you might say I'm expert at give and take because I am Capricorn. True. But again, this could get triggered very easily with this Mercury Mars on the 27th. A few days later, then on the 31st, to finish out the year, we have Jupiter stationed direct. And at this time, Mars is in Sagittarius, 12th. So it's exchanging with Jupiter. This is, although overall more positive and inspired, it is exchanged between your 4th and 12th. So again, there's some give and take here. You're going to have to give something up for your peace of mind. You know, it's that saying, you know, would you rather be right or happy? This is like, okay, maybe you'd rather be happy. Maybe there's a situation here with someone at home. Maybe there's a situation in general where you're just having to maybe surrender something, you know, let's just let it go. I mean, maybe it's just better off to be happy than to be right in this case. And in that way, I think it's going to be positive, because a Jupiter-Mars exchange trine is powerful. It's inspired action. It's like, okay, let me do this clear out for the new year. Let me have a huge clear out for the new year. This could be one expression of this, actually, with the 4th and 12th Lord exchanges. Let's do a clear out. Yeah, but I don't need all of this stuff. It's weighing me down. And start the new year fresh, lighter and more vibrant and buoyant. This is definitely more buoyant than transits of late. It's not just the Mars-Jupiter trine, it's the Sun-Jupiter trine as well at this time in your 12th house. And again, of course, it is your 12th house, remember. So it's just, again, about, it has to be things that you have to let go of as well to feel that inspiration. And that is, you know, something to think about, Capricorn, in December. To end about the nodes again in the 3rd and the 9th house, to remind you, because this is an ongoing long-term impact for the next year and a half. There's something that you need here and you want to express and you clearly want to go for. And you might have to relinquish something maybe it's a belief, an outworn belief that is just standing in the way of you getting that thing you want. And that's maybe a good way of thinking about this. But it's just that while you go for what you want and express what you want, don't forget who brought you here. Don't forget the knowledge, the people who taught you what they've taught you. It's kind of like that notion of standing on the shoulders of giants. This is what is to think about here, and how this is transforming the way you think and what you believe, which it will in this next year and a half. So Capricorn, I hope that's been of help. As always, I wish you the very best for the month of December, and until next time. For Aquarius rising and our moon sign for December 2023. So Aquarius, Saturn is now moving forward in your sign. Things are starting to move forward in your life. You're probably getting a lot more structured in your life. Everything is becoming a bit more systematic. You might feel that everything is sort of starting to line up again after some months now of Saturn sort of creating all this upheaval and change in you. And as that happens, Rahu, the other planet that rules you, which makes you so progressive and want to shake things up all the time yourself anyway, personally, is now moved into Pisces, a very sort of diffuse, confusing at times, but also creative and, full of potential sign. It's and with Neptune, even more so. It's like anything is possible now. But at the same time, anything being possible creates all of these potentials, but then maybe not a lot of focus. So for you to be able to focus all of this energy of Rahu in your second sign, while Saturn is moving through your sign in a more systematic, rigid way, it's like, I think you can channel the best of both of these, of course, by being very organized. And I think when I talk about Jupiter now, by the end of the month, stationing direct in your third sign, I think their potential there is there to be very organized into the new year as Jupiter stops moving backwards as well. And to use the Rahu energy to sort of shake things up and to kind of see things differently and to have inspired visions, about what you want to do and how you can take that on board and be more creative and expressive. And there's definitely a lot of potential here for you, Aquarius. The other thing is that Mars is combust in your 10th house, continues through Scorpio with the sun, again, inspired. I feel like this is like really inspired action, but it's like inspired within. It's maybe not outwardly focused and maybe not even to access. You might not be able to access it outwardly either, but this could be very inspired within you to be able to find the strength within you to do the things that you need to do. Because again, Mars is your third lord in your 10th house, combust, really asking you to dig deep and find that creative spark within yourself and the expression within yourself to be able to bring that out, to be able to voice that, right? Because it's in a trine now to Rahu, of course, that exaggerates that even more, this need to kind of speak your mind, to say what you need to say, to be creative. It's just that you might be hesitant initially because you're just finding your feet here again. Venus is now in your 9th sign. So I think Venus as your 4th lord and your 9th lord in your 9th house, Libra, I think this could be, some nice home time or travel time, either or, maybe both. This could be like making a home abroad for a while, like going on a holiday, in other words. This could be enjoying the arts. This could be just enjoying some more cultured things around this time of year, leading up to the festive season. Venus will move into Scorpio by Christmas, on Christmas Day, 25th of December. So that's another indication there of maybe just enjoying, some things around your work, that, what you have achieved already as well, thinking about that in your work life. But there are some complications in the month for sure. And one of those is Mercury retrograde. And after the new moon on the 12th, 13th, Mercury stations retrograde in Sagittarius, your 11th house sign, and moves back by the 27th on the full moon into Scorpio, from your 11th back to your 10th. So this connects, obviously what you're doing in your work and earnings. And the fact that the nodes are now impacting your 2nd and 8th sign also represented earnings. There's obviously something here about money and earnings and working these things out and trying to get more, stabilized here, I would say, and also more organized. One of the things here is to be more organized with the changes that are happening. The other thing about the Mercury retrograde is that, and I'll show you this actually first. This is the new moon, first of all, on the 12th, 13th. Let me bring it back to your sign. So the 12th, 13th, new moon in Scorpio, your 10th sign. Obviously, this is a new moon in your work environment. This is important in terms of, setting some intentions here. It's, yes, a dark moon and a weak moon. It's Scorpio, but it's propped up by Mars, your ruler of the 10th. So it's like, yeah, action orientated, but maybe within this kind of finding this strength within to do something at this time, or to even just plant seeds around things you're going to do. So it just feels a lot more positive in that sense, because the Sun and Mars are more conducive to the work-related stuff anyway. So I think that seems more positive overall, even though, again, it might be mentally, emotionally taxing in a way, because you're having to kind of work this out. But again, I still think it's more positive. The day after, though, Mercury stations retrograde in your 11th sign. And so whatever about work, what you're doing, it's like what you wish to gain from what you're doing could be something you start to really reassess from this point onwards. So from December 13th until January 2nd, Mercury is going to go retrograde until the 27th of December. It's doing so in your 11th sign. And again, what is it you're doing? Why is it you're doing this? What are you getting from it? What do you wish to gain from this? Who would you like to do it with? If it's some sort of creative endeavor or anything you want to do, what do you enjoy doing as well? Mercury is very much about enjoyment for you and enjoying with others. And in this case, it's very much about groups of friends, maybe, or groups in general, or any kind of people you're engaging with in society, in a social setting. This is a time to really ask some more deeper questions about, am I engaging? Maybe there's another way I can engage. Maybe there are other ways I can communicate in this kind of setting. So as I said, Mercury will station on the 13th, and it goes back into your 10th sign by the 27th, 2 weeks after this. So this is the full moon on the 27th in Gemini in your, let me bring it back to your sign, in your 5th sign. Opposite Mercury retrograde, which is about to step back out of the 11th into the 10th as Mars goes from the 10th to the 11th. So they cross over, as you can see here. See, they just crossed over. So Mars going forward, Mercury going back, and they cross over at this juncture between Scorpio and Sagittarius, your 10th and 11th. So it's like a real pivotal point in the year, really, in the month, certainly. And this sense of like, what am I doing? And, do I enjoy doing this? And like, what do I need to do this? You might be having to deal with other people and resources that other people have access to that you don't have access to. You might have to like negotiate here, and it might be a bit tricky, and it might be kind of come to a head in a way. So thinking about your own, whatever you're doing, whatever you want to do, and what other people are contributing as well. So there could be some issue here. Yeah, by the 27th of December, the whole last week of December really is complex. But, again, as long as you're aware of it, that's just like a red spot, a red flag in the month to be mindful of. A few days later, then, Jupiter stations direct in your 3rd sign, and Mars has moved into your 11th sign. And this is more powerful because Mars now and Jupiter are exchanging signs, and Jupiter is starting to move forward. This feels to be a lot more purposeful and powerful, and Jupiter alone moving forward in your 3rd, but in exchange with Mars in your 11th, it just feels a lot more empowering. And there's something here that you want, and you're willing to do whatever it is to get it. And it just feels a lot more inspired, actually. And yes, the continued Mercury retrograde until January 2nd might complicate things, but that's a brief transit. I mean, overall, this Mars-Jupiter is going to, be there for January into February. So I feel like the month of December just ends with an inspired feel, and then enters the new year with that same inspired action. And it's kind of like, when you take action and you just feel more inspired by taking that action, and then you take more action. And then that kind of, it just creates this positive feedback loop. Now, there is an effort to put in here because it's the 3rd Lord, right, Mars. So you really do have to make an effort to gain here. That's the 3rd and 11th house exchange. And you're not going to gain if you don't put that effort in, but, you're likely to put that effort in with that is what this suggests, at least. Again, the longer term impact of the nodes, as I mentioned, I think it's going to really shake up your finances and family dynamics, your partner's family, your family. There might be a lot more focus on your own finances. You might be, having more of a nest egg there, and maybe your partner is relying on you more, for example, or maybe your partner's family is going through changes that you're having to deal with, and maybe you don't want to deal with. Maybe you're thinking about your own nearest and dearest. And so there's an interesting dynamic with the nodes in the 2nd and 8th always, where you have to be mindful of getting a balance right between, yours and theirs, as in yours and your partners, whether it's finances or families. So that is the month of December. And again, the nodes are in ongoing transit for the next year and a half. I hope that's been of help for you, Aquarius. As always, I wish you the very best for the month ahead. And until next time. For Pisces rising and our moon sign for December 2023, Pisces, your ruling planet Jupiter is about to slow down its retrograde, stop moving retrograde, and station direct by the end of the month. And then slowly, very slowly into the new year, it's going to start to move forward again, thankfully. And so things can feel like they're moving forward. You are moving forward. And in your plans, whether it's personal plans or work related, or family dynamics or relationships or finances, these are things that could be impacted here. All of these things can start to move forward in a more positive way. Now, at the same time, Rahu is moving into your sign in December in a bigger way. And it's kind of like impressing upon you the need that you have to change. Whether you're consciously doing this or not is another matter, of course, because the node is an eclipse. It's a shadow aspect. It's showing deeper changes that are happening underfoot where you might not be mindful or aware of them even, and yet they're changing. And therefore, your relationships are changing because the North Node in your first, South Node in your seventh. But as all of these shift around, and they are the kind of slower moving, shifting sands in a way with the nodes and Jupiter, and as well as Saturn, which is in your 12th sign, also asking you to, again, maybe just cut ties with something or someone where you're then finishing that relationship with that person maybe, or finishing that thing you were doing, and then that itself is shifting the sands slowly. All of these slower moving planets are very impactful in your life right now because you have Saturn on one side, Jupiter on the other of your sign, and then Rahu moving into your sign. So there's a lot of like a sense in your chart of things happening to you, lots of changes, personal changes happening to you. It's obviously it's going to change everything around you, but it seems to be a lot happening to you. So that's something to be mindful of overall. And I do think there are more positive things happening in the month of December as we turn into the new year. And I'll show you those by the end of December, especially because it's definitely more inspired and positive. The other thing, though, to say is that there are some complexities, of course, in the month. And then I guess one of those is Mercury retrograde. I know that is a very common thing to hear. Oh, Mercury retrograde, everyone gets a bit sort of like rolls their eyes with it. But the thing is, this one is a lot more complicated, and it's something to be mindful of overall. Now, it might not impact you as strongly as other people, say somebody who's in a Mercury cycle of their life, but at some point you're likely to go through a Mercury cycle on some level, some day during this whole period. So just to be open, to be mindful, and especially as it retrogrades from the 13th, but especially by the 27th, and that's from the new moon to the full moon. So the 12th, 13th is the new moon in Scorpio, and the 27th is the new moon in or the full moon in Gemini. And it's that period that Mercury goes backwards through Sagittarius and returns to Scorpio by the full moon. It's a complicated phase there by that full moon on the 27th. So I'll show you that now, and I'll show you the new moon to begin and how all of this is panning out. So the 11th, 12th, as I mentioned here, is the new moon, depending on where you are. So this new moon in Scorpio is a dark moon. It's a debilitated, weakened moon. The mind might go to the worst case scenario, right? But at the same time, it's propped up by Mars, which is also in Scorpio. And although Mars itself is combust, so it's hidden in a sense, it's still very powerful. So there's this hidden strength, in other words, and this ability to prop yourself up and to find more meaning here in the ninth house, and a new beginning in a sense of taking action that's more inspired, doing something that feels a lot more you. And the fact that Jupiter is about to station direct in Mars's sign by the end of the month as well is just adding to this sort of impetus to kind of take action or to do something and to move forward. So all of that sounds really positive. Perfect. Thing is, Mercury is going to go retrograde the day after, and just to be mindful of those typical snags with Mercury retrograde. And one of those, of course, is that, Mercury rules the 4th and the 7th, and every time it does its retrograde, you reconsider your home life and happiness and relationships and all of that. And am I happy? You might start questioning that. And am I happy with this person even? That's Mercury ruling the 4th and the 7th. But Mercury is now in the 10th, which is a very sort of public, professional place, right? It's very much about what you're doing in the world and work related. So there might be some questioning, about these things. And is what you're doing making you happy? Like, is who you're doing it with, making you happy. All of these questions might crop up at this particular time from mid-month. And as Mercury starts to go backwards, and remember, 2 weeks later, we have the full moon in Gemini. So this is a full moon in Gemini. And let me go back to your sign for a minute. Pardon me. So full moon in Gemini in your 4th sign, opposite Mercury retrograde, about to move out of your 10th sign, with the sun here now as well, and Mars about to move in. It's really focusing on, obviously, 10th sign, after the 9th sign, the new moon. And again, what inspires you initially? Because you're not going to do anything unless it inspires you, right? That's the 9th leading to the 10th. But the 10th itself having the Mercury retrograde, and the Mercury retrograde going back into the 9th on the 27th of this full moon, as Mars goes into the 10th, they cross over each other and they meet with each other right on the juncture between Scorpio and Sagittarius, if you can see that there. So that is conflicted. That is potential hotspot. That's a red flag, in fact, I would say, for the month, where things could really explode here. And it could be just an internal thing for you as well. Mercury retrogrades often are. Mars, Mercury, yeah, in the 10th or moving into the 10th could be more public, in a way that you're kind of like, okay, you know, I have to have this out. I have to have this conversation. I have to, you know, have this discussion, this debate even about this thing. I would just be mindful of this, because it is Christmas week. It's the 27th of December, but the whole week I think is kind of a bubbling under all the time. So I would say just be mindful around Christmas holidays and dealing with people in general, and family and home life and all of these things, and how this could trigger something or someone, right? And I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying just to be mindful of it, because maybe something has to be said to clear the air. But I think after this is what happens. It's like it gets really interesting then, because now we're feeling a lot more inspired, because now we have Mars here in Sagittarius, which is really feeling fired up. And a few days later, on the 31st, Jupiter stations direct, your ruler. So there's a trine between Jupiter, your ruler, and Mars in Sag. And this feels a lot more inspired. It feels like, yeah, let's take action now, inspired action. And I feel good about this. I feel optimistic about this. And the 10th and 12th and 2nd houses are seen as a positive exchange. So where there's like, okay, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to feel good about this, and it's going to, you know, really stabilize me, and I'm going to feel, it's like it's a feedback loop that you get when you take inspired action and you get good results. Then you're inspired to take more action, and then you take more action, and then you get more good results, and it just rolls on and rolls on. So it's positive, and absolutely. The only pitfall of a Jupiter, always is the pitfall of Jupiter, is to take on too much, to do too much. This is the holiday season after all. It's moving into the new year. To kind of not be able to rest and just, you know, just be still for a while, just to take on so much, to bite off more than you can chew, literally. Now, that pun is intended, absolutely, because Jupiter is in your 2nd house of food. So biting off more than you can chew over the holidays is absolutely a very apt innuendo, I would say. So be mindful of that. But otherwise, I think it's just a very inspired thing. And I think this could, after the Mercury retrograde situation, and now Jupiter's moving forward, it could really clear the air in a more positive way. So if you had that falling out with someone, or somebody had that crossword with you, or you did with someone, or something was said, or just whatever it is, this could be, again, a lot more inspired, and again, action orientated, or just saying what needs to be said and then doing what needs to be done. So I think that is it, the month of December, the end of the year, the whole year, wrapping it up into the new year in definitely a more inspired way, I feel. For you, Pisces, you know, as is the case for all the signs in some way or other, but certain signs benefit from this Jupiter-Mars exchange than others, and I think you're one of them. So Pisces, I wish you all the best for the month ahead, and until next time.